And we're live.
Hello, can anyone hear us out there? Let us know in the chat if you can hear me.
And me. What's up?
And me 3. Yes, they can hear us.
You can hear us. All right.
Cool.
So this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss and internet shitlords, and this is Inappropriate Characters. I'm joined as usual by Venger Satanis and Florida Man RPG, though right now they're both Florida Men apparently, as Venger is coming to us live from the luxurious 2-star budget hotel in Orlando, Florida, I believe it is. And so today we're
Hotel Coral Essex.
There we go. You probably should have said that. Now someone's gonna swat you, dude.
That's a reference to Revenge of the Nerds 2.
Oh, okay.
That's not a real place, as
Not
far
a
as
real
I know.
You're a fake fanboy, Pundit.
Yeah. All right. So today we're here, just the three of us, no guests this time, and we are pretty much talking. Well, we'll talk about anything that you guys are interested in bringing up in the chat. But our main topic of the night is 1D&D, as they call it, or as I do it on my video, 1D&D. The D&D, the 1D&D to rule you all. And I've done, a video about this already, which if you haven't watched, you probably should, because it's probably one of my best received videos thus far. It was called the 1D&D Agenda, where I talked about, kind of in the bigger sense, the priorities, the actual motivations for this 1D&D being announced, that if you haven't heard already, and they're going to release in 2024, which is the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, a new semi-edition. It's not a real new edition. It's what they're going to call 1D&D, and so they say it's still basically like 5th edition, but they're going to do some changes. They're going to fix some things, right? And of course, in my video, what I was pointing out is that the real thing here is they don't want to change the core of 5th edition, because 5th edition is a very successful system, and because almost no one working for Wizards today would probably be qualified to design a new version of Dungeons and Dragons. So they don't have the option to do that. But what they want to do is they want to change the politics of D&D, and so that there are things that are going to change in the game because of political reasons, right? And so the one big example, for example, is that they're getting rid of racial attribute modifiers, or really almost everything to do with race and with alignment, because the left believes that Black people are orcs, and so they want to, they want to present this kind of anti-race essentialism perspective, so that, in D&D, there's no reason why a halfling shouldn't be as strong as an ogre, or for that matter, as tall as an ogre, I guess, because really, why not? Nothing means anything to these people. And the same thing.
Pundit. I thought Black people were goblins now.
Oh, I don't know. Aren't goblins Latinos or something? But
Hashtag height privilege for the halfling that wants to be as tall as the ogre.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. He might not be as tall, but he demands to be identified as tall. He has to be recognized as somebody who is identifying as tall as an ogre, and we all have to pretend that he's that tall. Just like, Abercrombie and Fitch now wants us all to pretend that a morbidly obese woman is sexy, right? So that's the world we're living in. So this is the overriding thing about 1D&D is the bigger agenda. But I thought that today probably it would make a lot of sense to take a look at some of the more specific things that have come up in the actual first playtest package. I don't know if either Joe or Venger, if you guys have looked at that playtest package.
I've watched a lot of videos.
I didn't know you
So I
got it.
watched-
Sorry.
I watched your video, Pundit, and I watched the Legion of Myth video, and which was really good, and then a couple others. So even though I haven't read anything, I've watched a lot of videos about it, so I feel like I'm qualified to discuss it right now.
Very good. And you, Joe?
I feel supremely unqualified to talk about one D&D, but I feel highly qualified to make fun of one D&D.
Excellent. Well, that's the real goal here, after all. So, what was I going to say? Yes, that I myself have not read the playtest package, but I have had tons and tons of people writing to me with specific things about the playtest package that they thought, well, first of all, that they thought were bad, and then also that they thought that I should probably see. Right. So I've got the greatest hits of stuff that is bad about the playtest package here. But first, let's look at some of the chat here. We've got Judd Goswick says, spoiler, D&D 1 dies after release. I think that's, I don't think so.
That's
I mean, you guys can place your bets here, but as far as I think what's going to happen is that certainly I am sure that 1D&D will lose customers compared to 5th edition. That's for sure. There's going to be less people that will have bought the 1D&D books than that bought 5th edition. And it'll be very clear that it'll never match 5th edition, the original 5th edition books, because there's a ton of people that are saying, well, you know what, I've got all the 5e fans that are saying, well, I've got all the real 5e books, the original ones, and I haven't liked the last few books because they've gotten all weird. So I just don't think I'm going to spend another $130 on like a new set of rule books, right? That when they've already told me it's backwards compatible, so why should I, right? Why am I going to buy a whole new set of rule books? If I really find an adventure or something that they come out with that I still want to play, in theory, I should be able to play it, right? So
Plus all the little microtransactions that they want to, end up charging the player base. Really, what they want to do is they want to make it like a massive multiplayer online game, but shoehorn D&D and getting together with your friends or like random strangers that agree with you politically online together to play. So it's like the worst part of both worlds, like combined. And I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, it sounds good in theory, like on paper, it probably sounds good, but in practice, I think people will either gravitate to offline D&D, in which old school is better, or they're going to be playing, World of Warcraft or something like that, where you don't need a game master and you don't need 3 or 4 of your friends to play along with you, or else there's no game. You can just like play World of Warcraft or one of the other dozen games that are just like that, to get that sort of online video gamey D&D experience without having to go through the hassle and the cost and the restrictions of one D&D online.
Well, I was going to talk about that second, but maybe we should start with this part. One of the big things that they've pushed when they were talking about D&D, 1D&D, is their new virtual tabletop that they're going to do, and all of this and all the online stuff. And so it's very clear. I totally agree with you, Venger. It's very clear that part of what they want to do is really push gaming that is not in person, gaming that is online. And I think, of course, part of why they're doing this is because, of course, there are more people gaming online than there used to be, especially post-pandemic, right? But part of it is also because that's where they can control things better, right? Because if you have to play on their virtual tabletop, like in the video that they did, they said, well, you can make your own dungeon. You don't have to use ours. You can make your own dungeon in the virtual tabletop, sure, but you can only make your own dungeon with their program, right? You can't import something from outside and put it in there as is. right? So it means they get to control the content of what is being played or isn't being played on their virtual tabletop. And you can't bring in foreign books, right? You can't bring in stuff that isn't proprietary. So it's a whole way for them to have like proprietary control over the content that the consumers are using. And I think that they're probably going to try to do that kind of exclusivity to kill any of the other virtual tabletops so that they can try to dominate the market. And they think that's going to be a big thing for them profit wise, but it's also going to be a big thing for them in terms of continuing to be able to socially control D&D gamers, right? So if you're not playing, if you're doing something that they consider inappropriate and they kick you out of there, suddenly you don't have anyone to play with, right? If they don't like, if they've decided, if you know the wokest elite have decided that something that was in the 1D&D rules is now suddenly white supremacist, well, they're going to change those rules. They can erase rules, change things, and then they'll force you to use the new rules, right? And you don't get to choose because you're using it all virtually, right?
And check those terms of service when it does come out, because if you upload your own homemade dungeon based on their whatever, their parameters, their rules, their protocols, that
Yeah,
could become the property of Wizards of the Coast.
that's right.
In which
That's right.
case you've just like given them free content that they can repackage and essentially sell to other customers, because they may not sell like that particular dungeon to other people once you've uploaded it and start using it publicly, but those people will be paying a subscription, I assume, for the service of playing online with other
You're
people.
going to be paying for
And if
everything.
that's free,
They're going to have like
that
little
dungeon exists.
microtransactions everywhere.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits that Wizards of the Coast can illustrate. Like, oh, look at all these dungeons that we have. We came up with our own half a dozen, and then all the users generated like 100 dungeons, beyond that. And now, if you pay like $5.99 a month, like you can enjoy that too. So
Yeah.
they're essentially like taking your stuff and selling it.
Yeah. I've got a question here from the chat from Chris Miller, who is, by the way, Mad Scribe Games, so the publisher of my incredibly successful Sword and Caravan book, and now it's just become a copper bestseller, the Social Encounters Along the Silk Road. But anyway, sorry, Chris says, if Wizards of the Coast takes the IP totally digital and rescinds the open license agreement, how do you think that will affect the OSR community and drive-through for that matter? Any takers?
Job, you want to address that?
I don't know. I don't know that they can rescind it. I mean, from what I understand of the open gaming license anyway, it's kind of like a license to breathe. It's giving you permission to do what you already pretty much have the permission to do.
Yeah, but I don't know if Chris is talking about the OGL, the open gaming license, or if he's talking about specifically the license for third-party D&D 5th edition products, which is different, right? Like the whole dungeon, what is it called? DM's Guild stuff from Drive-Thru, for example, because they could do that, right? Wizards could say, you know what? No more third-party products. We want to control everything in the virtual tabletop. So suddenly, everybody who is doing DM's Guild stuff fired, right? You can't publish this anymore. We rescind your right to publish with these books with our logo and our material in it, right? And I do think they can do that because that's a different agreement, and I'm pretty sure they must have put in an escape clause. I mean, the people at Wizards hate the fact that the OGL is escape proof, right? They just despise that because it means that if that wasn't the case, they could have like tried to sue everybody in the OSR that they don't like, but they can't. So
yeah. I mean, it's going to come down to what their agreements were with various companies, like Fantasy Grounds and Roll20 and stuff, for them to be able to sell their rule sets.
And Drive-Thru.
Yeah, Drive-Thru. Well, that's interesting too, because Drive-Thru and Roll20 just merged recently, right?
Oh yeah.
Remember that news? I wonder if that's like. I wonder their play there is they want to get bought by Wizards because I mean, because
Well,
what?
I think that might be it, because either Roll20 wants to be the competition, and they should be worried at least a little bit, though. Really, they're the older and more established company in this case. Even though it's Wizards and it's fucking Hasbro, right? You still have the fact that Wizards of the Coast has been trying to do virtual tabletops since like 3.0 edition, and it's always been a disaster every single time. It's like they're cursed. I mean, there was one time that they almost got it, and then the guy that was in charge of designing the thing did a murder-suicide thing with his wife. You know, like it's like it's a monkey's paw thing for them, right? They have never been able to get this right. Every single time, things go horribly wrong for them when they're trying to do virtual tabletop stuff, right? So and D&D Beyond has sort of been successful, right? So that's something, but it's not quite the same as what they're trying to do now, right?
Right.
So who knows? They might mess everything up again. There might be some other natural disaster or terrible crime or whatever that ends up ruining this attempt, right? But
I mean, look at that too. Remember D&D Beyond? They bought out D&D Beyond because that was supposed to turn into a virtual tabletop, but I don't think that ever came out, did it? For 5th edition?
No, well, I mean, they're doing now. They've bought D&D Beyond, and they're still talking about D&D Beyond, but they're also talking about this virtual tabletop that is apparently not D&D Beyond. It's something else, right?
Yeah.
So
to me, that tells me they know that they suck. They're just going to try to buy something. The biggest player out there, I think, is Roll20.
Well, if I was Roll20, I would either be prepping up to fight them, to compete with them, and buying drive-through is a big deal there, because that means that you can then make use of drive-through for Roll20, right? Or I'd be trying to get myself all gussied up and looking sexy for Hasbro to buy me out. Yeah, it's one of the two, right?
Yeah, I think.
I hope Wizards doesn't buy drive-through RPG. I mean,
no, I don't. I don't know.
Roll20, they did a merger or whatever, but Roll20 is way bigger than drive-through. I know people that work at some of those companies, and there's no comparison between. I mean, the one's got tens of things, and one's only got like less than 20 people, I think.
Yeah, drive-through.
There's still Big Geek Emporium, and for everybody that doesn't know that there is, albeit small, legit competitor to drive-through RPG, there is a new kid on the block, and that's Big Geek Emporium. I've got one product on there, just as like a test, and just to let people know that this competitor exists. And I don't know if you guys are going to put products up there. When I come back from vacation, and then I still gotta get like dozens of books to people. But after all that, I'm gonna probably put more stuff on Big Geek Emporium, and I would like people to use that as an alternative to drive-through RPG, because who knows what's going to happen? Who knows if Roll20 is going to do something, or Wizards is going to do something, and if drive-through goes through changes down the road that make things harder for us for the OSR, it's nice to have an alternative. So Big Geek Emporium, I hope people check that out and see what they got, and sign up for an account, download some free shit, and it's a win-win.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything because I'm not a publisher. I'm just a writer, so it's up to my publishers what they publish or don't and where they do that. But I wouldn't object if they wanted to put some of my books there, if some of my publishers wanted to put some of my books there. But yeah, I mean, especially if, considering that it's possible, now Roll20 has bought out drive-through, maybe Hasbro will buy out Roll20 and drive-through, and then we're all going to have a big problem, right? That's one possibility that because once Wizards, if Wizards has direct control over drive-through and not Hasbro, then the people running Wizards are probably going to make sure that drive-through first eliminates any potential competition for them, and second eliminates the OSR, right? So that at that point, having another sales place for indie RPGs becomes not just a good idea, but absolutely essential for survival. So maybe Big Geek has managed to pick the perfect moment to start, to start up, as long as they get their print on demand. There's people asking if they're already doing print on demand or not. I don't know. I believe they were planning to do it through Lulu or something, but
last time I heard they hadn't yet. But I mean, that's going to take a while. If they have print on demand in less than a year, like, I would be completely shocked.
Yeah, dude's just starting, but from my point of view, unless you have print on demand, like, that's what makes itch.io such a non-site, right? Like, itch.io could be the competitor to drive through, but the reason that mostly only weirdo hipsters use it is because it's PDF, right? It's not print on demand. So it's for these guys that do like these shitty indie games that, that they just want to like virtue signal putting out there, right? Yeah. Now there's another side of this though, is that let's say that fifth edition is, or rather 1D&D is part of what they do is shut down the DMs Guild stuff, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could happen there. There's a ton of people who write DMs Guild products, and I don't think all those people are just going to give up and go away, right? So I think that what might happen is that it's quite possible that just like Pathfinder happened when 4th edition came out, if 5th edition ends up either sucking as a game for some reason, or the policies that Wizards uses ends up looking too tyrannical, someone somewhere is going to bring out a Pathfinder equivalent for 5th edition, right? Like a book that's basically a game that's basically 5th edition with the serial numbers piled off. And maybe with some of the woke add-ons removed, right? Whoever does that successfully is going to make a lot of money. But also, if they open it up to third-party products, then all the people that were doing the DMs Guild stuff are going to move over to that and just use that as their cover, right? But also, some DMs Guild people might switch to the OSR. You never know, right? Like, the OSR has historically done well. It's historically done well when 5th edition is doing badly, right? And part of the track of that, it's so reliable that you can almost predict how 5th edition's really doing, or how D&D rather is really doing, by how the OSR is doing. So like, when 4th edition was tanking, the OSR was obviously in its boom period. And then when 5th edition came out and it started doing really well, I think that the OSR flatlined. It didn't. I don't think it might have reduced, because a lot of the smaller OSR writers that were doing like stuff that might have once sold well just doesn't sell well, and now there's certainly less OSR products coming out than there was in 2014, right? I think that there's still a ton of them, and they're quality products, but there's a lot of people that aren't looking at it as fertile ground for startups, right? If you're already well known in the OSR, you keep doing well. But the thing is,
a lot of overlap too, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean,
and the thing is, this last year or so, at least in my experience, the OSR has gone up, right? It's things are selling better. I am selling like I've been never selling before, and I think part of that is because the recent 5th edition books have been so shitty that there's more people looking at the OSR,
Yeah, who wants Strixhaven when you can, get
Chalt,
like Chalt or Carcosa or Lion and Dragon or whatever Job does.
Whatever Job does.
I finally got you back, Job.
Well done.
For your comments. People still talk about that. Like, tell it to me so simple that even Venture can understand it. I got you back.
That's become a tagline,
It's almost a meme at this point.
So Adino the Esnite here says the only way Wizards of the Coast is going to make their VTT preeminent is to tie it in so close to the whole digital experience that Wizard of the Coast's virtual tabletop will be the only way to play. Yeah, I think that might be what they're trying to aim for, though. Like, I think they're really trying to do that. They're not going to directly stop making the books, because that would be money they'd be throwing away. But I think they're going to be doing everything possible. All of their promotion is going to be come online and play D&D. It's not going to be buy the books and play in your basement, right? Because that's something that that they don't want. They can't control you if you're playing in your basement. And for years, whenever I've been doing these videos talking about how Wizards of the Coast wants to control gaming, talking about how the wokeists want to control gaming, people are saying, well, the RPG police isn't going to come into your basement. I'm like, well, no, but here we are, right? This is their answer. They're going to try to move the entire hobby online, where they, and we know that once you get online, right, and when you've subverted corporations, those corporations will censor for you, right? So imagine,
and they will have RPG police. Literally the D&D police will come to your platform, their platform, and they will enforce their rules. It's really the authoritarian edition of D&D, the 5.5 or whatever. It's their vision.
Imagine if the only place you could meet people and play RPGs was on Twitter, right? Like, so suddenly, everybody who's doing an RPG that Twitter doesn't like is going to get blocked from Twitter. That's it, right? This is going to be centralization of control, and it's
going to be a dystopian hellscape of woke D&D. It's going to suck balls, but luckily, online and role-playing games in general is so decentralized that we, the OSR, isn't going to be negatively impacted by that. In fact, we'll probably be more successful because so many people will be running away from that nightmare. And then we'll just have welcoming open arms like, hey, come play with us, because you can do things however the fuck you want.
Yeah. Chris Miller says the OSR community and conservative gamers in general need to create its own alternatives. He also just sent a super chat, I believe, Job.
Chris, thank you very much. $20 super chat. Don't buy games from people who hate you. Visit Madscribe Games LLC at drive-thru for non-political gaming content. Thank you very much, Chris. Always appreciated.
That count as an ad? Did he just do an ad?
Yeah, he just did an ad, but that, hey,
amen, Hoss.
Promotions
amen.
We're getting.
Check out Sword and Caravan and Social Encounters Along the Silk Road. Those are both from Madscribe Games.
Does Madscribe have any other good games that you've?
Anchor. And it's not an OSR game, but he did Anchor the RPG, which is I did a video review of it. Anchor is like this weird sort of sci-fi Sumerian, like it's a Sumerian civilization with super science, right? It's really cool, actually, and beautifully, and just like Sword and Caravan. Any of you who have bought Sword and Caravan have seen how beautifully produced that book is. Well, Anchor is just like that too. That's why I decided to go with Madscribe to publish Sword and Caravan, because their design is so perfect. Like they just did make beautiful books.
Yeah, Chris, by the way, I picked up the hardcover color edition of Sword and Caravan, and it looks really great. Good job on that.
Yeah. But Chris has got a point too, that like I wonder if there would be a way for somebody, and if there would be a market for someone to do a specifically OSR virtual tabletop. Yeah.
Probably. I mean,
so easy just get on a video chat, I mean, that's why like when you're talking about, Wizards is going to lock down the 5th edition, online virtual tabletop or something. I mean, you can always just fire up Hangouts and just roll dice with your hands.
Well, that's the problem, is especially in the OSR, so many of us are like basically Luddites of some kind, right? Yeah. And we're like, no, we don't want to use all, look, these fancy lights, they just give me a headache, and I don't want to look at all these weirdo maps and shit. This is like I was playing a video game or something, right? So like, people, OSR gamers are just gonna like get on Zoom and talk to each other on Zoom and roll the dice like, oh, I rolled a 5, okay. Like all the virtual tabletop is gonna be kind of lost on all of us.
Yeah, that's what's great about tabletop gaming, really. Anyway, is like get the hell away from a computer and a phone and all this crap that no one needs. It's killing us all.
Judd Goswick,
the technology will eventually become the enemy. That may be years and years down the road. But yeah, eventually the machines will own us, and we'll be their slaves.
Well, the internet has an incredible way of providing, of adapting to attempts to control it, right? So I think that as much as you are going to always have now these mega corporations that have a control of the like center town square of the internet, and that has to be dealt with. It has to be fought. There's constantly other stuff is being made that ends up providing an alternative for the counter movement, right? For the counterculture, right? So like, you know, if they take control of Facebook, well, you know, then suddenly you have Discord, you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah, there'll always be an alternative somewhere. Someone will say enough is enough and provide, you know, an alternative. So I mean, that's the great thing about humanity is, you know, we always try to find a way because we don't want to be locked in a box. But then we create new boxes that we can get in and out of. And then when those become too treacherous, the new ones are made. But sometimes you got to smash all the boxes. So
deep thoughts from Venture Satanics. Judd Goswick here says itch.io is for crappy indie PC games. They hit the RPG hipsters just co-opted it. Tarantule says one party D&D. Yeah. This is like one D&D is like what is like what D&D would be like if North Korea had conquered the world. You know.
Oh god damn, that's terrible. That's a great marketing tagline for us. Yeah, that sounds awful though.
Well, I mean, Chris Smith says the internet treats censorship as damage and routes around it. There's a quote by one of the TFF founders, he thinks. But just, I mean, the stuff you guys are saying is like, you know, we're at the point now where all these internet providers are like installing a president by managing the information people get, getting a bunch of sheep like Venger to inject poison into their veins, and
let the heroin flow. and
we're allowed to talk shit about vaccines now. I don't know if you saw that YouTube changed their terms of service.
Yes, you are allowed to criticize the vaccines now. Yeah, it's true. Where was I here? Bob Manob says, is Venger rocking the Crowley look on purpose? I think he's trying to be Anton LaVey here. He's always liked Anton LaVey more than Crowley, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I totally respect Crowley. But yeah, I feel more of a kinship with LaVey than Crowley.
Well, it makes sense. LaVey was a flim flam artist, and Crowley was
an actor. Go there, you son of a bitch.
Crowley was a real magician. LaVey was a showman. You know, that's pretty much. I'm a Crowley type guy. Venture's a LaVey type guy. Indigo Dragon says Radiant Citadel is a preview of 1D&D. Yeah, well, it is. I mean, the whole point of 1D&D is that now that they're woking up all of the campaign books, they need to woke up the core rules, right? They're no longer satisfied with the problematic things in those rules, right? And they want the core rules to reflect the new policy, which is like, you know, in D&D has always usually been about adventurers going into places of danger, seeking treasure, or to fight evil, right? And what Wizards of the Coast wants D&D to be about is theater kids showing off their latest fashions and you know, working out their daddy issues, you know. so
and it's a barista in a coffee shop.
They want to turn D&D into, right? They want to turn it into being about, you know, visiting a twee wondrous carnival, or, you know, working at a cafe where things are, oh my god, so random, right? Like they don't want D&D to be about the heroic ideal anymore, and so they need to change the rules to make that easier for them, you know.
We haven't even talked about the critical hits.
No, I was originally going to talk about the playtest material, but we jumped into like the meta material instead.
Yeah,
but we can get on to that. Yeah.
They don't want. I mean, I assume these rules are going to change a little bit, but my personal feeling is that they're not going to change that much, despite whatever feedback they get. They're going to make it their way, which is woke and lame and authoritarian. So yeah, they're going to take critical hits away from monsters, and I assume enemy NPCs. And so it's basically going to be like, I survive, my PC survives no matter what.
Look, this is what I've been told is in the playtest material, which is that now monsters and NPCs never critical. So you if your player character will never receive a critical hit because that's triggering, right? So you're not allowed to the DM is allowed to do something that could maybe kill your character, right? Characters are practically not allowed to die anymore. They're also changing the injury rules to make it even harder. 5th edition is already ridiculously hard for your character to die, and they're going to make it even harder for him to die because they just don't believe characters should die for no reason, right? Because they don't understand how a role-playing game actually is supposed to work, right? They've also changed the criticals so that the only things that do criticals now are melee attacks, right? They're combat attacks. So magic doesn't do criticals. Only a physical attack does criticals, and they've also apparently changed how the critical works, because now the only thing that a critical hit actually does is it shifts the die type. It makes it so like if you were doing a D8, instead you're doing, I don't know, a D10 or something like that.
Oh,
so
really?
Yeah. So the criticals actually mean less also, apparently. This is all stuff I've been told by people that are informing me about what's in the playtest package. So if any of that is wrong and you're in the crowd, you can try to correct me on that, right? What they've also done is established as a hard rule that in every roll that is a D20 related roll, if you get a natural 20, that's automatic success, and if you get a natural 1, that's guaranteed failure, right? And you might say, well, that doesn't matter, right? But people are pointing out now that, it means that every town blacksmith could mastercraft a sword in 20 tries, right? Like anything you want to do, you want to pick an almost impossible to open lock, right? Let's say what would have been in 3rd edition a DC 35 lock pick check, right? Well, if the thief gets to try 20 times, he picks that lock, right? Statistically speaking, so like it actually fucks up the game in a very, very bad way, because a natural
I would hope
20
they wouldn't do that, but at this point,
anything, right?
Who knows? And I don't really care. I mean, no matter, I can't imagine a world where their 5.5 edition is anything I would ever buy or play or suggest or recommend that someone else go out and buy or try or play. I mean, I can't imagine it not being garbage. Not only for the woke stuff, but just the playability, gameability direction that D&D is going in. I can't imagine them like turning the ship around and making it cool again or more old school.
Unless there's massive changes in the company, yeah.
I can't imagine that in that short period, that like 18 months that they have to actually put this shit together, or less. I can't imagine that they're going to do the right thing. I think they're just going to go further off the cliff, and it's just going to suck so hard.
Yeah.
That it could ruin D&D for at least an edition or two, maybe a generation. I don't know. But hopefully that's going to rise the OSR's value, and then we can, that's a good opportunity for us and for everybody else that wants to make their own, D&D or their own role-playing game or their own OSR supplement or adventure or what have you.
I want to very briefly change topics here because of a comment on the chat.
Well, Pundit, hold on one second though. We did get a new subscriber, and Tabletop Junkie. Thank you very much for subscribing. All right, go ahead, Pundit.
Okay, Terran says there's still talk about Hasbro wanting to sell off various properties. Maybe we should get Elon Musk or the Embracer Group to buy D&D. Well, listen, Terran this is now public knowledge. Hasbro, I think it was a year or two ago, suffered an attempted takeover, right? That there was an investor group that was, they wanted to force Hasbro to change some of their company policies. And one of the things the main thing that they wanted to do was actually to sell off Wizards of the Coast. And the Hasbro board fought that off, right? So it's very clear that the people in charge of Hasbro right now do not actually want to sell off Wizards of the Coast. Now, does that mean that they'll never do that? No, I mean, they obviously could. And if somebody were to offer them an offer they couldn't refuse, either in terms of how much money it is or another, corporate takeover, because in fact, Hasbro hasn't been doing all that well as a company, except Wizards of the Coast, which has been doing very well, though most of that is Magic the Gathering rather than D&D. But D&D has obviously been doing a lot better these last 6 years than it used to be, right? So it's still got a lot of momentum to it on paper.
The movie too.
Yeah,
if the movie comes out.
But the thing is too that the guy that was really pushing for D&D for all Hasbro stuff to go into Hollywood, who really wanted to push Hasbro into an entertainment company and make a bunch of movies based on Hasbro games and toys and D&D. The D&D one is the one that we know is happening now, right? But the architect of that was the previous CEO of Hasbro who died. And so he's dead now, right? And the new guy that's come in is this guy Cox, right? Who was briefly in charge of Hasbro, and is now he's the boss he's previously in charge of Wizards. He came in from Microsoft, right? So he's not a games guy or a toy guy. He's just a corporate guy, right? And it's very much not clear whether he really wants to keep going with the late former CEO's agenda of turning Hasbro into an entertainment company, especially now when things like movies have become a lot more risky as a venture, right? It's really post-pandemic, movies are not in good standing, right? Some of even the best performing movies after the pandemic have been very, very few of them and very exceptional, So Hasbro might rethink all of that. We might get the D&D movie, and if it doesn't do incredibly well, that'll be it. They're not going to keep going there in that direction.
No. Yeah, so they try to make it like the female, the female Ghostbusters type woke edition of movies. That's just going to be the death knell for that kind of movie.
But in any case, I don't think that there's an active interest right now in selling off Wizards of the Coast. If Elon Musk offers them $500 million, they'll probably think twice. But I don't think that's going to happen either. Moving on, Terrential also makes a big frowny face emoji and says furry Aasimar is a core race. Yes, that's a thing now. I don't know if you heard about this. I think they're called Ardlings, which are basically a furry race that is now one of the core races of the playtest packet. And it's really weird because they have double characteristic. One is that they're furry creatures, and the other one is that they are half angels, basically Aasimars. They're celestials, right? So apparently we're being told that furries are wonderful people.
He sure did his story and says we call them arselings.
Arselings, yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. I don't know if there was demand for this, or I guess the furries demanded it, but I think the furries would rather have had the fucking Tabaxi as a core race. But maybe they can't do that because that's Tabaxi was. I know that Critical Role has used them, but Tabaxi were an actual D&D monster. So I don't know why they decided to make this weirdo thing as a core race instead of there are other furry type monsters that you could turn into a core race if you really wanted to, though. Good God, why would you?
Why don't the furries colonize a role-playing game like Toon or something and leave? Maybe it makes sense. Are furries woke, generally speaking? or politically
God, I have
leftist?
no idea. I don't know. I'm sure there are woke furries, and I'm sure there's also like absolutely anti-woke furries, and
Yeah,
but I mean,
regressive furries or
furries,
something.
the most famously obvious thing about furries is that they have a huge number of absolute degenerates that are also furries, right? Like there's all, furry fandom in like the early 80s when it just started up was basically like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? It was about making comics and cartoons with anthropomorphic characters, and it was pretty much harmless, right? And then there was this one famous furry convention where a bunch of like BDSM people came over and kind of took it over, and then the art started to change into like being stuff about like humanoid lions wearing adult diapers and shit like that, right? And so suddenly the entire furry movement had all of these freaks that joined it, and they didn't stop that from happening. And so the furry movement turned into basically a fetish, right? And then that's what it is today.
You seem to know a lot about this topic, Pundit.
Well, I do, because I was a big fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? When in the 80s, like not the cartoon. I'm talking about the comics, which were really, really good, right? Like they're not, people who only watch the 90s cartoon have this idea of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as being a kid's thing, right? But if you read the Eastman and Laird comics, they were super sophisticated. They were very cool. And then suddenly, that sort of thing turned into this like weird, freaky shit, like, and I've always used, I've written about this in my blogs, like from years ago, as a case study of why you have to beware of letting fetishists or other weirdos take over your hobby, right? Because there were a lot of people who were into stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that definitely did not want their hobby to turn into a fetish movement, right?
Right.
And the thing is, in a way, that's sort of happening with D&D now, right? Because if you look at Twitter, the D&D hashtag, you do any search on the D&D hashtag, and you're going to find that it's absolutely littered with these people doing presenting artwork or talking about their gender diverse bisexual or pansexual or whatever character, and that they think that that's the hobby, right? They think that they're part of the D&D, well, they call it the community, or nowadays D&D family, they call it, right? That it's actually that D&D is a pastime about you making these freak characters and talking about them and showing art about them online, right? And that's what D&D is. And of course Wizards of the Coast kind of wants that to be D&D, right? They want the games, the books that they write, like all the recent books that they've made, to support that, to be like, oh yeah, you don't have to actually have an adventure, you just have to have like these diversity weirdos going and having food tastings at a night market, like that's Radiant Citadel, right? It's summed up in one. So that's what they're trying to turn the RPG hobby into.
I want
And
to make
adding
one
a
point about the.
oh,
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I wanted to make one point about the playtest materials. I mean, as I admitted, I haven't looked at them yet, but I wonder if some of the stuff they're putting in there, like taking out the crits, is just them trying to stir up some people talking about it online. I don't know if you remembered, if you guys read all the different versions of the 5e playtest stuff when it came out, but some of the stuff in there was like obviously bullshit that they just threw in there to try to get people riled up or something. I'm not sure why they put some of that stuff in there.
Like what stuff do you mean?
You know what? I can't remember now. I just remember there was
Yeah.
a bunch of.
I mean, yeah, not everything from
There was
D&D
ridiculous
Next
rules. Like there was one like the
became
improvised.
5th edition.
Yeah, 5th edition. There was some improvised rule. I just remember there's a bunch of different rules that people were like complaining about at the time, like improvised weapons or something, and you could be a dwarf with 2 shields and be like, I don't know, really effective. I can't remember. There were some other things in there that was like, when I read it, I was like, this is definitely not going to be in the final game. They're just like throwing shit at the wall, either see if it sticks or like get people to whine about it online to like.
No, that's true with 5th edition. I mean, I know this because I was involved at the time, as you all well know, right? And with 5th edition, unlike most of the stuff that Wizards have done before, their playtest process was a real playtest process. It was the biggest one they ever did, and it was one where they weren't just doing it as marketing. They were trying to suss out what people who are potential players of D&D would really want there to be or not to be. Now, there were some things that were never going to change, but there were some things that definitely they needed feedback on, right? So, like, for example, how popular...
That's where they came from. Go ahead.
Sorry, how popular advantage or disadvantage were really going to be as a mechanic, right? Because there was a big debate about that happening inside Wizards, right? There were certain people like myself that were saying, look, this is going to be your killer app, right? This is going to be your perfect, the mechanic that will define D&D, and you guys should totally use it. But there were other people that are going like, no. I don't think we should, this is a step too far. Or maybe we should just use it for very few things. We should use it for 1 or 2 things, but not for like everything, right? And I was like, well, look, you either shit or get off the pot, right? You got to use it for everything. And the playtest, that checked out. People really liked advantage and disadvantage, right? So that's why they kept it. It wasn't just because I was arguing for it. It was also because the playtest proved it out,
I think that's because 5th edition came out of 4th edition, which was kind of a bomb.
Fucking a disaster, yeah.
But since 5.5 or 6th edition is coming off of 5th, which was very successful as a whole, especially early on, I don't think they're going to take the playtest seriously at all. I think this playtest is mostly about marketing, and mostly about virtue signaling and getting their name further out there, and like driving up the buzz and media exposure and stuff like that. I don't think they're taking feedback seriously at all. I think they're just going to like rubber stamp everything, and whoever the top designers think is pretty good, unless it gets totally panned by all the right people, the woke people. I think they're just going to greenlight everything that's in the playtest documents, and they're just gonna, run with it to try to get online as fast as possible.
Unless there's something that ends up being absolutely reviled, right? Like, let's say nobody likes these arslings, right? Then maybe they'll switch that out and put in a different furry race instead. But it's still very clear that they want to have a furry race in there, So they're going to have some furry race, even if, like say the arslings are not popular, then they'll just replace it. But that's about the extent of what the playtest process is going to be.
Right. There's so many fanboys that will just lap up whatever gruel Wizards throws at them. That there's no critical thinking there at all. It's like Wizards puts out this garbage. The fanboys eat it up because they don't care. They're just like part of the machine. And then Wizards is like, okay, cool. Everybody loves this. So let's put it out there. It's going to be great. It's going to make us a ton of money. But you can't run a successful and maintain a successful empire on lapdogs and fanboys alone. You need like real
Isa
gamers.
Would beg to differ.
Because of Magic the Gathering? Or
Yeah,
do you have another example?
Pathfinder, man. I don't know. Something about Pathfinder players.
Well, the Crunch Monkeys just love that stuff. So, yeah, I guess the more crunch... But I guess Pathfinder 2 is less crunchy. So, but maybe that's why it's not doing as well as they expected. I don't know.
I think we just got a couple of new super chats here. Joe?
Yeah, we got to read those. I was going to say that too. But Sad Wings Raging, $10 super chat. That little, I don't know what the hell you call that. A sticker, a gift that says thank you with a fox. I think it's maybe licking. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to come on to you as he's a furry or something.
It's the furry agenda here.
Monday, you and Sad Wings take that offline, please. And Space Zeus is giving us another $10 super chat. Good evening, all. Original TMNT was amazing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
All right, so sorry, I forgot where you guys were, but
Well, you should probably get the shilling. I've only got like 5 minutes left.
Oh yeah, I guess we should go on to the shilling section. Yeah.
all right, here. Nope. Okay. We got SEC
First.
and SE.
All right. So Sword and Caravan is my latest campaign book. It's available from Mad Scribe Games, as I've already mentioned tonight, and it's been doing like just incredibly well. The sales on it have been amazing. You know, it's an Electrum bestseller, and I'm guessing it's going to be a gold bestseller before long. And I now have a source book that's for Sword and Caravan, but it's actually usable for any OSR game, which is called Social Encounters Along the Silk Road. And as of today, it's now a copper bestseller already. So it's also doing very well. And what Social Encounters is about, it's a 21-page PDF, $3.99, so super affordable. And it's mechanics. It takes the reaction roll mechanics from the basic expert set, which any old school gamer is familiar with, and it expands them and makes them into a much more detailed set of guidelines that you can use to negotiate not just encounters with a random monster or something like that, but social encounters in different social activities that your characters might end up engaging in any situation, right? So the book has the basic rules of how this expanded version of reaction roll mechanics works, which is basically the way I've been using it in my games for years now, right? And then there's a ton of different specific examples. So how you can use these mechanics for like specifically to do stuff like haggling or bribery or intimidation or public speaking or rumor mongering, obtaining information, seduction, or all sorts of other things, right? So there's a bunch of specifically already mapped out case studies of how to apply it, and it's done in the context of the Silk Road setting, but it's mostly stuff like whether it's haggling or intimidating or public speaking or debating or any other, presenting yourself in front of a judge or bribing someone. These are all things that you can use in pretty much any OSR campaign. So if you're like looking for a way to be more precise in how you adjudicate, and this is not a modern, a new style social mechanic where it all that matters is what you roll or something like that. It's not a skill-based check or something like that. It combines the way the player role plays his character and the tactic he uses in the social encounter with the reaction roll mechanics that take into account the characteristics of the person or people that he's interacting with to try to come up with what should be the best, the correct result of his attempt. So I think it's a very interesting OSR version of how you can do social role playing in a way that gives you some structure, but still allows the role playing to be the central part of it. So check it out. I'm sure that a lot of you will find it useful, whether or not you get Sword and Caravan. But my God, you should get Sword and Caravan because it's had nothing but rave reviews and is a fantastic setting. And it's a lot of fun to run. So check both of those out, and check out all my other products: RPG Pundit Presents and Lion and Dragon, Dark Albion, Cults of Chaos, and Star Adventure, The Invisible College, and everything else. I guess that's it for now. Go ahead, whoever's next.
Okay.
Venger.
Me? Okay.
Got Chartreuse Shadows and VengerCon 2.
Okay. Yeah, Chartreuse Shadows is still a PDF that still exists. You can get that on DriveThru RPG, and in the adults only category. Yeah, it's 360 pages. It's book 3 of the Troll trilogy. So it's got a lot of stuff. It's got the latest mega dungeon, the Kremzom Erikzom, just subterranean sex dungeon, among other things. And it's got I mean, it's just got so much. It's got adventures, and it's got optional rules, and it's got more campaign setting. You know, the Eldritch, Gonzo, science fantasy, post-apocalypse. What else? So that that's still for sale, and I'm still getting books out to people. So if you haven't gotten your book, don't worry about it. As soon as I get back from vacation in a couple days, I'm going to get back on the package horse, and I'm going to be shipping those out to everybody because so many people bought books that it's just like it's basically a second job. Me shipping these books out to people. It's been going on for what seems like months, and I'm nearing the end finally. But it's just like day after day after day after day after day. I'm just sending books out as fast as I can on my own, and yeah. So I'm finally nearing the end, and thanks everybody for buying one and for backing the Kickstarter.
Can't you make your kids ship all the books? Like Bill Webb from Frog God Games. He's got all his kids in there. They're like tied up. They can't eat until they pack like 10 boxes.
I like to hand do everything myself just because A, I want it done right, and B, my kids have want to play, and pretty soon they'll be starting school. So my oldest is 11, so it's there's some quality control
to get them
issues
working with their hands.
Yeah, the little tiny hands. So yeah, there's the Chartreuse Shadows. That's the first one, and then VentureCon 2 next July, Madison, Wisconsin. It's going to be a fantastically awesome time. Old school OSR traditional gaming. That's the focus of the convention. So I hope people go, and it'll be just as awesome, if not more awesome, than the original VentureCon convention, which was last month. And I assume that there will be a link in the description below, maybe, or you could just Google VentureCon 2 Electric Boogaloo, and then you'll find the page where there's more information on like the hotel and whatnot, and then you can get tickets. And I think that's it.
Hey, Venger, I was gonna make a suggestion to you, right? I don't know if you've ever considered doing an equipment guide for Chalt, because you should do that, and you should call it Chalt Tech. And then you should do a guide to ritual magic in Chalt, and you should call it Chalt Rites. He's thinking about it.
I don't. Yeah, I know there's a joke there somewhere, but I don't get it. Chalt Tech.
Chalt Tech and Chalt Rites.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. Maybe that's over your head. I don't know.
There's a lot of play on words you could do with Chalt.
Wait, didn't you get in trouble?
So aren't they?
Wait, didn't you use Chalt right once, and like all these people attacked you on Facebook?
And Pundit. He didn't attack me, but he was just like, "What are you doing, Venger? Oh. You're embracing the alt right." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't even." Yeah, the Chalt right was a meme for a while. Some people, the one guy on Facebook still talks about it. Every time I say something about like, "Oh, I'm running Chalt on Roll20 in like 20 minutes," and this troll will like follow me around and just be like, "Chalt right," and then that's the only thing he'll post, and I'm just like laughing, like LOL, like okay. I don't know. People are ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's true. One thing we can agree on.
What have you got?
Yeah, Joe, hit us. Hit us up.
God, I'm still selling this freaking book.
Yes, way to sell it. I want a copy. I don't know about you.
All right. Yeah.
I got sent one. I'm gonna have to review it eventually.
Yeah.
It's coming. My review of the book of Antitheses is sooner or later going to be coming out.
All right, and it's gonna blow up.
How's the book with a hole in it? Is that still selling well, or is that James's problem, or what? Do you get?
No, it's still selling the best out of all of them.
Okay.
Good Lord.
We should do it, Job. You and I should do a book trade.
God help James Radji.
You sell me, or you send me over a signed copy. I assume you have a few signed copies. If you send me over the book with a hole in it, I'll send you a signed and numbered copy of Chartreuse Shadows.
All right.
Well, here's what Job should do. His next book should be the Book of Antitheses 2, the Florida Glory Hole.
Yes.
Oh.
Forward.
Actually, I was thinking about
this time. Forward by Venger
It could be an
Satanis.
adventure about Ponce de Leon or something like that, you know?
Because I'm in Florida so often these days that I need to like contribute like a little bit to the glory hole, the Floridian glory hole.
Venger, my next book, I was thinking about doing sex magic for dungeon masters.
Oh, there we go. that sounds right up your alley.
I was thinking
I should be a part of that too. Yes.
Yeah, Venger, do you want to work out? You want to collaborate?
Yes. Finally, someone asked me a good like collaboration thing.
Pascal Randolph is rolling in his grave.
Oh, you don't have your book yet, do you, Pundit?
What book?
The Chartreuse Shadows.
Which one?
No, have you sent it already?
Yeah.
Well, that's the Uruguayan mail for you, I guess. I've seen no sign of it. No.
You're my inappropriate character, bro. So yeah, obviously I sent you like number 2 or number 5 or something. Yeah, I sent yours like right away because I know that Uruguayan mail. You're probably gonna get it like the end of August, hopefully early September.
I hope so.
Yeah, I sent it like a month ago, so you should get it.
I will let you know
soon. Okay.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, hopefully you'll get it by the next episode of our show, but probably like a week or two.
Right.
And everybody else that gets it,
it's incredible.
Write a review.
I think that the Uruguayan mail has hit rock bottom, and it just keeps getting worse. You know, like it's just amazing. But yeah. All right. So is that it for our pitches?
Yeah.
That's it. Joe is just so excited.
Like totally demoralized or something. I don't know. All right. So back to the chat here. Tarantule says, Wizards of the Coast are terrified of edition wars, but it's already starting. Yeah, I've seen that it's very interesting because I've definitely seen people on social media who are 5e people, right? Like we're not talking about OSR people or something like that. We're talking about people who are dedicated players of 5th edition that have already said, well, you know, I'm just not going to buy the new books because why would I? You know, like they've got the 5th edition books, and this is like the double-edged sword that, you know, Wizards doesn't want to make a new edition that's incompatible because they'll lose a shitload of people then, right? Because 5e is very popular. But the fact that they've made it, they claim at least that it's completely backwards compatible. It means that there's a bunch of people that just won't buy the new books, you know, because
I mean, you don't need it. And if you don't need it, why buy it? Especially in this shitty economy.
Yeah. And so the real case where there could be a real problem for them is if their claim of backward compatibility is not quite so true, right? And that is, I guess, possible depending on how much they change in the rules, because it's very clear that they're not planning to change the skeletal underpinning of 5th edition. But if you make enough little changes, I mean, for one thing, they're changing the magic system in a big way. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but they've basically just reduced all of the spells to 3 lists, right? The arcane list and the divine list, and then like a 3rd list of well, I don't know if they're called primordial spells or something like that, like a 3rd list of weirdo spells, I guess.
It's probably some shit for bards.
So what that means, what it means is that every class will draw from only those 3 lists, which means that like before, you know, a druid had a very specific set of spells that they would access, right? And now they won't have that, right? Like they'll be drawing from the same list mostly that I guess a cleric would, you know. and that does in important ways change the game, you know, and it certainly could change some of the supposed backwards compatibility. It's funny. Now, ironically, when I was consulting on 5th edition, I had tried to convince Mike Merles that there should be like you should super simplify the list of spells and have one or two broad lists of spells, right? And then have everybody just go from there, right? But he didn't think that was a good idea. And I don't know, maybe he was right. Maybe I was right. I'm not sure. And I don't know exactly what Wizards is doing with the spells. I'm guessing they're not doing exactly what I would have done with them, but I suspect that they're probably going to figure out somehow the worst possible way to do this reduced spell list, you know, or the streamlined spell list. So that is going to be a big change, because it's going to mean that the spellcasting classes are going to be less distinct, you know. They're going to be more generically using all the same magic, you know.
Because that makes more sense in an online sphere. You know, I can imagine all the way back to playing D&D computer games, you know, back when I was a kid on my, you know, Commodore 64 or Commodore 128, whatever. Even playing the Bard's Tale, which was awesome, but very limited because it wasn't like a real role-playing game. It was a computer simulated role-playing game. But, you know, you had very simple spells like, you know, Magic Missile and Fireball and a couple others. And then, you know, because that's what it was. It was like a lot of combat, a little bit of exploring, and then some social interaction, which was like to shoehorn the exposition and the plot to get you to the next place so you could like combat some more monsters and eventually level up and get their loot, and, you know, the cycle repeats. So that, I'm sure that's what they're going to do. I'm sure they're going to simplify spells because they want it to just like be quick and cool online and just like blast things, so then you can get into more fights. And I don't know, to me that's not a lot of fun, just running around fighting things all the time. That's not what I get out of D&D. I do like combat. I do like adventures that occasionally have monsters or wandering whatever, where you fight them and get into combat and situations like that. But that's not all I want. I mean, that's only a third of D&D to me. And so even if I was totally on board with the direction that D&D is going in, I wouldn't like it for that reason alone, is because once you get to online play, you get the visuals. You know, it's like you have your miniatures and they're all set up in this town or this dungeon, and you can like see it all. And then one step beyond that, it's just like pew 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 pew, roll some dice, fireball.
So
and then you see the little miniatures fighting each other like swords, slash, clank clank, and then you really turn it into just a video game.
So we got here, Adina the Esnite says that N-World is filled with fanboys whining about how everyone's hating the playtest. You know, I think that's interesting.
Did you say N-World or N-Word?
N-World,
okay.
I
was hoping that's what you said.
So, you know, I think it's interesting because there's actually two types of whining that's going on. There's some people that are saying that they don't like the mechanical changes and what have you for like probably gamer type reasons, right? But the other side, the other thing that isn't working very well for Wizards is that in spite of the fact that they've basically eliminated race distinction of any kind, you still have all over Twitter a bunch of the wokeists who are attacking D&D, saying that Wizards has not gone far enough in removing the race essentialism from Dungeons and Dragons, because apparently you still have, like, you know, certain races have specific racial feats, and that's somehow wrong. How come Earthlings can fly but halflings can't? Right? That's racist. Why can't you have a halfling that can fly? So it's crazy, right? They're once again, nothing they do will end up satisfying the process of wokeism that is actually meant to just demand that you have constant revolution, because nothing is ever the end point of the need for change, right? So once again,
if they do listen to feedback, that's the kind of feedback they'll listen to. Like, how woke, further woke can we make this new edition?
Yeah, absolutely. And but it's really funny, right? Because they're already racist,
Right.
One playtest package in, and they're already white supremacists again,
They always were.
Yeah. And always.
I gotta put the kids to bed, so I'll see you guys. By Florida time, I have stayed up till 9:46, which is an all-time record for me.
So you see, guys, we finally figured out how to get Venger to stay up a bit later, which is that he has to go on vacation. So
that's right.
You need to support us on Patreon so that Venger can go on vacation again in the future and get to stay up 15 minutes extra.
Yes, Patreon us.
There you go. Support us on Patreon, guys.
All right. Thanks for everybody. Since I am remote, I'm not like reading the comments on YouTube. So everybody that said hey to me, cool. Hey back. Rock on. Earlier in the week, I was at I was at Epcot, and we were on Soarin', and I heard the most distinctive voice. One of my superpowers, besides, whatever awesomeness with the game mastering or writing adventures and whatnot, is that I can hear a voice that I've seen, or I've heard on like television or film or something like that, and I can immediately like recognize it a lot of the time. Anyway, I hear this voice, and immediately I perk up my ear. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that voice. And then I see this guy just in like profile in like the half darkness, and he's like 10 feet away. And as he's walking away from me, I'm like, that's Tracy Morgan. And he's like, hey, what's up? And he like keeps walking. Like, yes, I recognize you as a fan. Thank you for your, whatever. But I get this like 10 times every hour, so I'm gonna live my life. I was just like, oh, cool. And then everyone around me was like, who's Tracy Morgan? And I'm like, he's, the Silent Live guy, and he's been in TV shows and movies. And so then I had to Google him for everybody, in my family. And, but that was cool. I don't know. And then after the ride, I saw him in the hallway because he was waiting for his family. Cause I guess he got everybody in his family on the ride. And I don't know if he's afraid of heights or whatever. He didn't go on the ride. He just got him into the ride, and then he was outside the room waiting for them. And so I saw him again, and I thought about asking for a picture, but he just seemed to want his privacy, and so I wanted to respect that. But I was like, cool, because I like him. He's very funny, and I think he's a good actor. So that's it.
Well, so the news flash there is Venger spends inappropriate characters' money on supporting Disney. That's probably not going to get us a lot of new Patreon subscribers. But.
I know. I don't spend your Patreon money on that. I spend my own money on that to satisfy my wife and my kids. So that's the Patreon money I only spend on hookers and blackjack. That's the Venger Satanist guarantee.
All right. You heard it here first.
On that note, I'm out. And everybody have a good week, a good weekend, good game, good week next week. I'll talk to you all in a couple days when I'm back in Wisconsin. All right.
All right. Take care.
You too. See you,
I
Joe.
wish you salt and pepper.
Keep doing whatever it is you do, Job. It's great. It's awesome. And we're going to collaborate. I hope that's a real thing, because I want us to work on something together. Okay.
Okay. So some more comments here. Unscripted Unchained says YouTube shills will promote 1D&D because their views and subs demand it. Well, not just their views and subs. Here's the thing, right? There are YouTube channels that get free merch and access and stuff like that from Wizards of the Coast. And those people, just like, you see this with all kinds of other things, with Disney, with, HBO or whatever, right? The guys that are just very obvious shills for products, they're just basically a type of marketing. They have this parasitic relationship, right? Where they want to keep getting the promo stuff and all of the goodies and stuff like that. So they know that to do that, they have to be like gushingly fanboys about whatever they're being sent. Which is very different than on my channel, where I get review books, and everybody who sends me a review book knows that I might trash it. I have no compunction about saying that something is bad when it's bad, right? But yeah, you've got a ton of 5th edition YouTube stuff where the people are just going to be over the moon about how wonderful the new edition is, and you're going to not be allowed to hear the slightest bit of criticism there. Judd Goswick says, Venger's bedtime is always such a bittersweet time. T-shirted historian asks, RPG Pundit, did they pull it down not finding it on DTRPG? I don't know what you're talking about there. I'm kind of behind on the comments, so maybe you'll have to update me on what you were asking about there.
Maybe you mean social encounters or something.
It's on there, man. You just look at do a search for social encounters or Mad Scribe Games, and you will find it. Or RPG Pundit, for that matter. You should be able to find it. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I've been getting there've been a few people that have said that they try to look for Sword and Caravan and they can't find it with a basic search on drive-through. But every time I've tried to, or the publisher has tried to, it shows up. So I'm not sure what's going wrong there, if indeed anything is. But yeah, okay. Adina the S-Knight says, search for Mad Scribe and you'll find it. I think DTRPG purposefully makes finding pundit stuff difficult. That might be true. It hasn't stopped it from becoming a bestseller, though, so that's something anyway. Dark Knight of Hibernia says Chalt and Pepper. Yeah, that could be another Chalt book. What else have we got here? Ironcaster says sex magic for the DM is a blowjob for a +2 weapon. Bob Manob says Pundit doesn't buy other authors' books. Well, no, I don't have to. People send them to me. That's one of the nice things about being the pundit. Let's see what else we go. Dark Knight of Hibernia says, I'm going to the Chalt mines. Oops. T-shirt historian says, you didn't see Merles anywhere in that one D&D video, did you? Because he's canceled. They'll find some way to lock him out of 5.5 along with you, Pundit. Well, Mike Merles is working at Wizards, but he's no longer working in the D&D division. Somebody mentioned that they think he's doing Baldur's Gate. I think that might be right. I'm not sure. But anyways, he's still there. He's just not on D&D anymore. And unfortunately, the people in charge of D&D now are worse than Mike Merles, who was just too weak to stop them. Ben says it'll be interesting to see how Jeremy Crawford will cope with the first edition of D&D he's ever been involved with from the start, rather than riding the coattails of Merle's. Yeah, well, his trick is going to be that he's still actually using Merle's rules, right? He's just going to be tweaking it, and of course the tweaks will probably make it worse rather than better. But
I think one D&D is when there's only one member on the R&D team at Nazi. When one D&D comes out, one of them is going to backstab all the rest of them.
Well, that wouldn't be unlike standard wizard stuff, yeah. Malachi says, Venger giving money to people that hate him. Yeah, exactly. He has not learned the lesson. Venger should have pitched a Chalt project with Tracy Morgan. Well, that would have been epic, yeah. No doubt. I don't know. I don't think Tracy Morgan would have really been receptive to that, but maybe. T-shirt historian says, RPG Pundit, I finally found it. They hit it really well. I didn't even get a notification that it was up. Terrential says, Sword and Caravan comes up fine for me. Shrug. Yeah, it's weird. I didn't know the S Knight says, so question, since D&D is our hobby, how much emotional currency should we invest into D&D and to one D&D, especially since we've chosen not to give money to people that hate us? Well, it's important to talk about this because, it's still the dominant force in the hobby, even though it's now an actively hostile force against the hobby, which is a really bad situation to be in. Like I debate whether it would be better if D&D was dead rather than D&D being run by people that hate D&D and hate gamers. It's a good question. Terrential says Watsy has to hire a David Zaslav like guy. He's been absolutely brutal to the wokus over at Warner Brothers. Yeah, well, give it a couple of years, especially if one D&D ends up flopping, and that might exactly be what happens. On the plus side, all of this is accelerationism towards the inevitable go broke part of the get woke, go broke formula. So it is possible sooner or later. Like if Hasbro has been subject to takeover attempts, and if they stop making money because they're getting so woke that they can't make money anymore, one of those attempts is going to succeed. Ben says, I wouldn't be surprised if WotC eventually adds an AI DM to the 1D&D virtual tabletop. Yeah, well, wouldn't that be exactly what they would want? I don't know if the technology is there yet, but when they can create an algorithm that does the DMing and that you're forced to use that instead of having DMs, because that's the biggest fly in their ointment, right? Is that they can control the books, but they can't control the person that's running the game. So if suddenly they get to control how the game is run and you basically eliminate the DM from the equation, that'll be that's their dream, right? That's where they suddenly have total control over how everyone plays D&D. Skynet D&D, yeah, exactly. That's absolutely what it is. Charlotte Williams says, AI DMs and AI players just make the whole AI-driven D&D campaigns and pretend everything is fine. That's their model, I think. Well, Charlotte, you're being a bit joking there, but I think that their real total ideal would be a D&D community where D&D is a lifestyle product, and that the activity that it is centered around is not people sitting down and playing Dungeons and Dragons, but rather people going online and watching their chosen professionals playing D&D, right? So like the Critical Role type of scenario, right? That's what they want. They would be super happy if they could make a financially viable hobby out of, or community, so to say, out of people not playing D&D, people being D&D fans, but that are passive consumers, not active participants. You know, the problem is that I don't think right now they've figured out how to do that in a way that gets sufficiently monetized for them. But if they can do it, if it could end up being that D&D is actually a company that sells plushies and it sells T-shirts and subscriptions to the D&D channel, or something like that, and you only have like paid actors doing D&D, and then they can actively tell people, oh yeah, you shouldn't try this at home, kids. If you try to actually play D&D, you're probably a white supremacist, so don't do it. You should just watch people who have been specially trained to do it the right way, and that should be how you have your fun, is by watching them entertain you, with this fake D&D.
Another super chat, $5 from John Fraser. Thank you, John. He says the one D&D must be cast into the fires of Mount Doom.
I think that's in Washington State, right? But yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so other things that we want to talk about here.
Telling me to insert ads. I'm going to try it again and see. Somebody in the chat, tell me what just happened.
To do what?
Oh, to insert some button. Google's telling me if people watch an ad.
Okay.
Wait, I'm hoping it's just like a little banner at the bottom. That will. It's for. Here, I don't. Oh, that's probably. Oh man.
Are you done?
I'm done talking. Yes, sorry.
So obviously a lot of the stuff that's in this playtest package is relating to the stupid concepts that they have about race, because again, leftists think that black people are orcs, which is an incredibly racist thing for them to be thinking, but they do. And out of that, they have this whole idea that, you have to promote racial justice in D&D, which is just absurd and stupid and ridiculous. And now it's having an actual effect on how the game is set up, right? So one thing that a lot of people have commented on is how, the races no longer have ability score modifiers as such, and so that there's basically no difference between races. Another thing is that they've changed how you do half races, right? Like half elves or half orcs or stuff like that, where basically you just pick the physical appearance of the character, and then you pick which of the particular racial ability they end up inheriting, which is funny because it means you can have like somebody who's mixed race, halfling and orc, let's say, who look totally like an orc but have halfling abilities, So whatever, right? Yeah, you can be half anything now in the game, as Adino just pointed out in the chat. But another thing is that if you look at the descriptions apparently that they give about creatures in the D&D book, they go out of their way to basically state that there's no such thing as an evil monster, right? Like with the orcs, if you look at the description that they provide about orcs in the playtest package, it suggests that they're, everything but evil, that they're a wonderful race of proud warriors or whatever. I don't know what the specific detail is, but it's like they do linguistic and mental acrobatics to try to make orcs still somewhat like orcs without doing any kind of judgment on the fact that orcs are traditionally, savage murderers that despise all other races, So and one of the things apparently that has been mentioned in the playtest package, which I thought was very interesting, is that out of all of the mixed races, the most common is an elf orc mix. Apparently, elves and orcs love each other. They're constantly, there's all these elf women that are looking for, big orc action or something. And that everybody's totally cool with that, right? Which is just so like, what the hell are they doing? Like, what is that supposed to be about? Like, it's just so ridiculous. And as a way to destroy all concept of good or bad of heroism. And it almost sounds like, considering what traditionally was the origin of the half orc, it sounds like rape apologism. It's like saying, that the well, no, all those elf women, they actually wanted it. Like that's what you're implying there. So once again, the woke agenda betrays women. It's pretty incredible. Bob Manov says, you have to realize that WotC isn't trying to sell to us. We're not the target market. That's true in the sense that most of us on here are old school gamers. Most of us on here are probably Gen Xers. Their target demographic is apparently millennials, which are, I did a video a little while ago about some of the demographic facts about D&D 5th edition, which when you look at that, at the demographic details, is that the majority of D&D gamers are not Gen X and they're not Gen Z. It's not mostly teenagers who are playing. It's mostly 20-something and 30-something people who are playing. So millennials, right? But that said, I'd still argue that Wizards of the Coast is not, in fact, trying. It has a target market, and it's not trying to sell to that target market anymore, because it's not trying to sell even to a typical millennial age D&D player. What they're trying to sell to, which is crazy, is not their target market, but rather it's wokeists that are on Twitter and Tumblr and places like that, who are I don't think reflective of anybody in society, not even the millennials as a collective whole. So there's stuff here that I think a lot of people will look at and say, well, this is just dumb, right? Even if you are a millennial Democratic voter, you're going to still look at it and say, well, yeah, okay, but now this makes D&D boring and stupid, and it's only being done. The whole thing about, elf chicks love the orc, is being done specifically to mollify some ridiculous critical race theory advocate on Twitter, that would never play D&D if their life depended on it. They don't give a shit. They hate D&D and want it to die. But in the process, they go through the typical wokeist thing of pretending that they're giving a criticism that if only D&D was like this, then people would play it. Even though no matter what D&D does, they're never going to play it. So yeah, they're trying, Terrence, you'll just said it, they're trying to sell to people who never buy anything. And I think that's the fundamental flaw in their entire approach. All right. Anything else to add? Anything else that the live chat wants to bring up before we start to wind things down? John Fraser says, once D&D is no longer popular, these woke SJWs will drop it. Yeah, of course. That's their modus operandi, right? Once they've killed the thing, they don't need, then it's gone, right? They don't need to worry about it anymore. Their goal is not to change D&D, it's to kill D&D. They only talk about it in the language of change as a way to introduce the cancer,
You got a new subscriber, Delta Ray Studios 3.
Hey, thank you very much.
I said that wrong.
No, I think you did it right. Okay. Delta Ray Studios 3.
Hey, welcome to the channel.
Yeah. St. Michael says, it's so bizarre to me, my millennial generation who grew up with South Park, Jackass, Jerry Springer, and Attitude Era wrestling, now as adults find offense in everything. Yeah, well, there's older and younger millennials, though, right? Like the millennials that were born in like 1982 or 1985 or something like that. They're a lot less woke than the millennials that came of age around 2001, right? Those guys are the ones that have fucked everything up, you know. John Fraser says paladins without a god. Yeah, but that was something that was already stupid and already in 5th edition as a rule, right? Like this idea that there's been a lot of debate about that this last 24 hours on Twitter, because someone was pointing this out, right? And some people are defending it. They're saying, no, paladins have nothing to do with gods. Paladins are about taking your oath, and all your power comes from your oath, which is your own belief in the oath that you took as a paladin, right? And it's like, yeah, but that's because it's a sacred oath. That's the whole point. It's a sacred oath that you take as a religious knight, you know. And I know, but it doesn't say that. I'm like, well, you know, that's inherent. You don't need to say it because it's obvious in the term paladin, right? And they're like, well, show me where in the books it ever says that, you know. And I'm like, well, look at the Song of Roland, dumbass, you know. Like that's where the term paladin comes from. It's the French version of the Arthurian legend, you know, the Matter of France, which is it's the story of godly and heroic Christian knights stopping the Muslim invasion of Europe. You know, that's what the story is. It's about these warriors for God, you know, and it's absolutely full of the religious aspect to it, you know. So it's just a ridiculous argument. It always was, but it was already part of 5th edition that in theory you could be an atheist paladin, you know, which is unbelievably stupid, right? The fact that you can be paladins of alignments other than lawful and good is stupid, but you know, because you could have a cavalier that isn't lawful good, but a paladin is by definition supposed to be that. You know, that's what they are. They're ultra religious warriors. So apparently there are some comments that were hidden on the chat. Okay.
I have to, as the thing goes through, if it marks it, I have to click a button.
John Fraser says paladins are like the Knights Templar of D&D. Well, yeah, well, not quite. It's even more than that, because they're not. You know, the Knights Templar were a real chivalric order, and it's true they were a religious chivalric order. The Knights Templar were created theoretically to protect pilgrims to the Holy Land, and you know, you also had the Knights Hospitaller and so on. But paladins are older than that. They date to Charlemagne, right? To the idea of Charlemagne as the great Christian emperor, and his top knights, just like, you know, Arthur had the Knights of the Round Table, but Charlemagne, it was real, had his paladins, his cadre of the greatest knights of the realm, who were also all, you know, devoutly dedicated to the Christian cause at the time that Muslims were invading Europe, you know. Paladins of Azathoth, yeah. Well, that could make sense in Chalt, right? But it doesn't make much sense anywhere else, you know. Bob Benob says, I'll stick with AD&D 1E with all of its Gygaxian quirkiness. Well, yeah, that's fine, though. You might want to check out Lion and Dragon. Tarantula says, didn't the Templars worship Baphomet, or is that nonsense? No, I mean, it seems, I don't know if we really need a history lesson here, but it seems like to me pretty clear that the Templars definitely didn't worship Baphomet. That was an invention that was created as part of the scheme to eliminate them because the King of France owed them too much money. Now, it is possible, of course, that the Templars had some weird, because they had like an initiation rite that they did for people who became Templar Knights, and there might have been some weird stuff there that was not exactly strictly dogmatic to the church. We don't know for sure one way or the other, but it seems possible. They certainly could have picked that up. But actually, the real thing about the Templars is that they were never as holy as they were supposed to be, right? The Templars were constantly getting involved in politics. And then after the Crusades, they became heavily involved in commerce. They were caught up in these in basically they were the bankers of Europe, the first sort of bankers of Europe. They were providing loans of enormous amounts to very important people, which got them a lot of power until it had gone too far, because then you had kings and other people that basically owed them everything, and so once that happens, the king's either got to pay up or he's got to get rid of the Templars, right? And they'd become pretty cynical pretty fast, like they had started with like these vows of poverty, and by like the time of their third Grand Master, I think it was, they got rid of those, and suddenly they were the richest knightly order in Christendom, So I think that's more along the lines of where their sinfulness was to be found. Sam Basco says, where can we buy inappropriate characters, Merc? Well, you'll have to ask Job about that. If anyone's going to make inappropriate characters, Merc, it's probably him. So, okay, I don't know. Any ideas?
I can figure it out.
I don't know what we would have.
I don't know. Maybe we should get a new logo.
Maybe. We should have a T-shirt that says, explain it like you need Venger to understand it, or whatever. I don't know what the line was. Explain it to me like you were talking to Venger.
Forget about it.
Right. Anyways, it sounds like we've gotten to the productive end of our video today.
The bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. So our next video is going to be our next live stream, rather, is going to be, I believe, on the 25th of September, assuming that everybody can make it. So we'll see what we do there. We might have a guest star. We might not. I don't know. But yeah. So check us out in 4 weeks, 25th of September, unless we change it, and we'll let you know if we do. And thank you everybody for watching. If you like, don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit like on the live stream, and share this video later on with anybody who you think might want to see it or might get pissed off by it, whatever. And check out all of our products too. Be sure to support us so that you will have an alternative to having to play 1 D&D.
You guys.
Okay, take care.